Learning how to develop ethos is one of the critical components of becoming a more effective speaker. If you want audiences to believe you, you need to take the time to develop trust and credibility with them. And that's what ethos is all about. But ethos is a little bit more complex than that, and it involves a few different elements. Ethos is about, in each speech, taking the time to think about how are you going to show your good moral character to your audience, how are you going to show your credibility or your practical knowledge to your audience, and how are you going to show goodwill towards your audience. And note that a compelling speech will develop all three parts of ethos. So the first part of ethos is good moral character, or arete. If you've ever heard someone talk about ethos in terms of ethics, they're likely referring to this part of ethos. So arete is about showing your audience that you're an ethical person, that you have good moral character, that you believe in right and wrong, and that you know right and wrong. When our audiences think that we have good integrity, they're more likely to want to trust us and believe what we're talking about. One of the good ways to develop arete is by telling stories that reveal your good character. You tell a time that you did make the right choice. If you have an audience that believes in hard work, you might tell them a story about a time that you worked really hard to achieve something. Historically speaking, speakers have developed arete by telling the truth, even when it might be personally harmful for them to do so. Now, the second element of ethos is phronesis, or our practical judgment. If you've heard people talk about ethos in terms of credibility before, that is likely what they are talking about, phronesis. Phronesis is based on the speaker displaying their knowledge and practical understanding of the topic at hand. If an audience believes you know what you're talking about, it's much easier to persuade them that you are correct. So how do we develop phronesis? We need to show our audience our understanding of the topic. So make sure you're doing your research. You're showing your audience that you understand all the facets of the topic. You are providing new and novel information to your audience. You're citing your sources and explaining why your sources are trustworthy. And you are trying to translate complex pieces of information into something that's more bite-sized for your audience. So be precise, be accurate, cite your sources, do your research, and if you do all of that, you'll be developing your phronesis in no time. And third, we have Eunoia, or goodwill towards our audience. Eunoia centers around showing our audience that we actually care for them and their interests, as opposed to our own personal interests. So think of politicians. If you think a politician is out there just for themselves, they're out there to make money for themselves, then that politician has not developed Eunoia, because you don't trust that they are trying to help you. You only think that they are in it for themselves. So Eunoia is about demonstrating that we care for our audience members and that we care for the common good. When an audience believes or perceives that you care for them, they're much more likely to listen to you and want to support your ideas. So to develop Eunoia, we need to display why we care about the issue other than we're in it for ourselves. So it might be telling a story about a time that you were impacted by the issue, or that someone you care about was impacted by the issue, and that kind of shows a more genuine concern about solving the problem rather than doing something for yourself. You might talk about why your point or the issue you're talking about matters to them or their community, or how it's going to impact them as opposed to impact you. In persuasive settings, Eunoia can also be developed by recognizing that there are other sides to the issue and that other people believe differently than you. So you recognize those differences, you explain those differences, but then you still walk the audience through why you view the issue in one way despite other options on the issue. And so by doing that, you're showing the audience that you care about them, their beliefs, and you want to engage with them and their beliefs, as opposed to just stating your own thoughts on the subject. And so that is goodwill, or Eunoia. Remember, as you try to develop a compelling speech, you need to be thinking about all three of those: arete, phronesis, and Eunoia. Now that you know a little bit more about displaying your character and your credibility to your audience, you can move on to the next topic, which is to start thinking about how do we develop compelling arguments in the first place.